So most people assume that cerebral palsy is, again, a brain trauma premature, which that is by definition. They usually don't pull an MRI, but until an MRI is pulled showing brain trauma, that's cerebral palsy. The average age for detecting cerebral palsy is 18 months of age. Okay, I get, what do I need to do specifically to help my child? And this is what I'm trying to tell you for detecting cerebral palsy. So first of all, the birthing process is very important for vaginal delivery, right? If you need more information, there's a newborn assessment, there's a mini course. This is the first rotation the child gets when they are leaving the body. This is also the first time a child starts learning about active and passive muscles interacting is through the mother's womb. The womb is contracting. That's phase one of the birthing process. And then there's a passive phase where the baby can move into position, right? So these muscle movements are transferred from the mother into the child. Up until that, in a womb, there's no muscles used, there's no rotation, right? The womb is there to have a frictionless environment for the body to expand in all directions. So when you have birth trauma, when you possibly have a C-section, when you have NICU, so there's environmental factors, the birthing factors and such that can happen. Even if you've had a previous C-section, right, and you have to have another one. I'm not saying don't have a C-section. What I'm trying to say, again, this is the first interruption possibly of your child's movement vocabulary, right? Some of these conversations come into effect with autism as well. But with cerebral palsy, a child is presented into this world and needs rotation and weight transfer, okay? Well, let's look at an underweight child, all right? We're already battling 1,000. If your child's, let's say, a kilo or a pound and a half, the object of weight transfer is different than a 10-pound baby, okay? The water weight is different. Every week early a child is, right? First of all, the skin grows first and then the body fills into it. So this is where, too, you get the epidermis. It's sort of like putting on your dad's overcoat. I don't mean to be facetious in any way, but imagine, you know, you see the child, the ripples of the skin because they haven't filled it out yet, right? But that creates movement complications in the child. For every day that you're in the NICU, if you're intubated, all those kind of things, pulse ox, these environmental interruptions come into play. Because you have to remember one real quality of a baby. A baby doesn't do anything that's difficult or that hurts them. So if I go to try to raise my arm, right, and there's an IV in it, let's say, they'll never try that again. So the first thing that you're looking for in a baby, you should be able to touch them in any part of their body, right, and have a rotational movement. So meaning that I just go like this. Right? And the baby should respond from my rotation in, they rotate and do all that. And they should have a weight transfer. When that is interrupted, that's your first big warning sign for just to be involved. Do we wait for it to continue? No. This is where you go in with a gentle touch. You can just be watching TV with your baby. You can be in the NICU with your baby. You can be doing a joey hold. You still can offer these principles that your child's going to need for movement, right? Second big warning sign that you have to look for is, can they initiate or respond to stimuli through rotation and weight transfer? In other words, if there's a light or a noise, you should see this. They almost look like little boats in the water, right? So this is where you might say, oh, it's flight or flight kind of thing, the startle or something that goes into play. Well, what that's really going on in their nervous system is, first of all, they haven't learned their first big milestone, which is either breathing or lying down. It gets coordinated within that. And then they're unable to respond. So, you know, you can sit there and do all of this all you want, but again, it needs to be a weight transfer. So if they can't weight transfer, they're going to start to do a deviation to that. What's a type of deviation? It's like coming to my office would be down 94th Street. Let's say it's under construction. Now you have to go down around Plaza del Rio or from Thunderbird to Bell, right? That's where your cognitive comes into play as to, well, that's what a baby will start to do. They don't say, you know, I need to, again, work on that. Because babies don't work. They are just responding to stimuli. The second thing you really have to realize when they respond to stimuli is there's no bad movement for a baby. We might start defining a bad movement a good movement, but is it eating, pooing, and sleeping, and moving and looking at lights, ooh, there's a fan, and they start going off to what is successful to them. You should not see, your other warning now is any kind of muscle movement going on or an engaged muscle. Earlier, I would say then about 2 months-ish, 3 months of age. And even that, it's random touching, random rolling over, random movements, right? It's not a purposeful movement. A big warning sign to me is, oh my God, my baby's so smart, they couldn't hold their bottle. And, you know, they're only 2 months old. And I'm going, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. Why? When you start engaging in muscles, now whether it's me going cross-eyed, that's an engaged muscle, or I have my contractions that you might see, anything that you define as an engaged muscle, you now wipe out weight transfer. You can't have a load lift variation and weight transfer at the same time. Now, as an adult, absolutely. I can engage hardcore muscles, right? And I still have weight transfer. This is Cirque du Soleil stuff, right? You will not see a baby do that. If they engage here, weight transfer is gone, and you've lost me, right? So that's where you start having those complications. I want to say with all of these, I'm sort of going through a random month-by-month basis of development from social to physical. During this time, it is against a parent's DNA to find fault with their child. I've had people where their child was in the NICU literally for 5 months, and there's still, I wouldn't even say hopes, but finding fault to seeing CP is just really hard on parents. Like it's a new baby. And then too, all our pediatricians are saying, oh, it's too early to tell. Why? You can use everything I'm telling you on a completely happy, typical, you want to make a super baby, you start doing this stuff from day one. So those are things to look at. I'm telling you right now, any child with neuro-based muscles issues, now whether you want to define that as cerebral palsy or other genetics, most genetics, by the way, do not give you the high tone. Most genetics give you the low tone. It's usually the trauma that gives you the high tone. Not in all cases, but in general. And you want to, first of all, I don't care how good your neurologist is. I read a really good book, it's out of date, or I think out of print these days, by a neurologist, and she goes, I don't care how good your neurologist is, you get a baseline. And then it was like, oh, Graham has a hole in his heart, oh, he's, you know. But again, I started going ahead of time. Even if you decide you don't need the appointment, you can cancel it. I'm telling you now, it's going to take you easily 2 to 3 months to get in with a specialist. Sorry, I have hair on my face, it's driving me nuts. But you really want to offer that to get that done. You need to see an ophthalmologist. I'm dead set with it. You know, the optic nerve, what's going on, a small corpus callosum, again, not looking to find fault. What is the structure that we're working with? Because I can tell you how to help your child visually. But if I don't know the structure, you know, it's one thing for me to give you advice on how to work with central vision and so forth, but if you have, let's say, a little bit of optic nerve hyperplasia and a little bit of glaucoma, I'm going to have to give you different tools. So for me to do my job better, I just need to know the structure. I'm not a doctor, right? Functional vision, I'm your girl, right? But functional movement, I'm your person. So I don't look to see where the brain damage has been and so forth, but I do, it helps when I need to know these things. I had a 5-month-old and had him in my hands, and I said, he doesn't have cerebral palsy. And they're like, yes, he does. He has epilepsy, cerebral palsy. I said, you have a right to be concerned. I really advise you getting a second opinion. It's not cerebral palsy. There's something going on. They didn't check. He had a brain tumor. I mean, I know that's rare. Those things happen. And then the tumor was benign, but it still started growing into his skull by the time they found it when he was 2. So it's still not a good outcome. I've worked on very severe cases. I've worked on very mild cases, but I've also worked on cases. All my cases, I would say, you're going to see improvement, right? And that's the whole thing with the brain. If you can catch it early enough to show the brain a different outcome, that comparison of movement, that better way of being, the brain's going to seek it out, right? This is why McDonald's winning. It's not winning because it tastes better. It's easier. Our bodies like easy, right? And that's where we like easy, our babies like easy, right? So when they go into cerebral palsy, it's a very difficult way of moving with that. Now, same thing. Take your hand and go like this. You're going to take a thumb and go like this. You'll see range of motion, right? But if I start tucking my thumb, look at now the difference of my range. If I start tucking my thumb, look at the difference. Look at the difference. Now I'm not crossing my midlines. So it's different when a baby, you'll see in the momentum of a hand, that open and close should be the same. Why? Because I'm going against gravity. I'm going against gravity. This way as well as this way. That's what a baby is doing. It's not palmar and plantar as far as that. I'm responding to opening to gravity and I'm closing within gravity. When I commit, right, especially if I'm here or worse here, this is not 18R, guys. This is my balance. This is my balance to my version of weight transfer, and this is maybe what I have to do to get my arms around. That's why, too, babies are not born dystonic. It's something they come into. They develop into with movement, right? So these are the ways that you want to start looking at and detecting, but interacting with the system as a movement, right? And that's what I'm after with detecting cerebral palsy. In detecting cerebral palsy and working with it, you really have to maintain weight transfer in a baby. So what I'm going to add to that is that's where you have to watch your environment. Swaddling a child that's already had a rough start, let's say, or putting them into a swing too much, or a car seat. Again, I'm not giving a blanket of what's up with the child. They don't help when a child has not been evaluated properly. Start using the evaluations maybe that I have, or looking at that way of not only of where your child's at within the dynamics of cerebral palsy and the movements of cerebral palsy. Because the last thing I'm going to tell you with detecting cerebral palsy is, again, we or babies counterbalance, right? One thing that a baby will do immediately with cerebral palsy, they will counteroppose, right? So if I take my glass of water, it will stay on the horizon. But when it goes against that horizon and goes into that, I'm not saying if your child startles once in the week that they have CP, but if they go into a counter opposition and poses, we're in trouble, and you need to get aggressive. And that's where I will say stuff, you have a right to be concerned, or you need to be aggressive.